Good afternoon. I'm Robert LaFoyer, Senior Biotechnology Analyst at Noble Capital. And here, our next presenting company is Connect Biopharmaceutical. And CEO, Baron Court. Take it away.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for joining. Even today it's just a convenient spot to have lunch. We'll start with the usual forward-looking statements. See our filings for complete information. So I'm very pleased to be here today to introduce to, I'm sure most of you, Connect Biopharma. We're kind of under the radar company that has a phase 2 asset, essentially from our perspective, an improved Dupixent, IL-4 receptor antagonist, which has demonstrated really best-in-class activity in a phase 2 asthma study. It's demonstrated safety and efficacy in both asthma and atopic dermatitis out to a year. And we are targeting asthma and COPD for this product. And we see an opportunity for a really completely untapped market that biologics have never gone after. And we have a unique opportunity to go after this market, which, as I'll show you, can drive very significant value creation. We have 2 studies that will be starting beginning of next year that will provide the basis for demonstration of efficacy in acute exacerbations of asthma and COPD, with the goal of ultimately this product entering the market in early 2029. IP protection until 2040, completely new management team over the course of the last 5 months. And the goal has been to turn this, what was a small Chinese biotech, into a US-centric biotech with a small outpost in China. We have a strong financial position with over $100 million in cash as of our last filing. So we're not here looking for money. We're just here to introduce the company and hope people start to appreciate the value that we have. So this just highlights kind of 10,000-foot view of the studies that have been conducted in both asthma, atopic dermatitis, with our lead program, rademikibart, again, an IL-4 antibody. And we're currently about to initiate the acute COPD and asthma studies, US predominant sites. We may have some sites outside the US, but many of the other studies that have done with this product have been China focused. And there's currently 2 studies going on in China that are being sponsored by our commercial partner in China, Simcere. And so we'll get the data from those, but there's no cost to us. So just a very quick kind of overview of the 2 diseases that we are targeting, which in large part really make up eosinophilic-driven respiratory diseases. So there's asthma and COPD. You can see very high rate of failure from first-line treatments. But most importantly, what we're interested in is the very high rate of patients showing up in the ED, emergency department, or hospital for both asthma and COPD, and how many of those patients then come back over the next 30 days. And that's relevant because the hospital doesn't get paid again if the patient is discharged and they come back 2-3 weeks later with another exacerbation. So there's a health economic value to keeping that patient out of the hospital. And we believe, in fact, that we have the opportunity to do that in a very significant way. about half the patients fail in 30 days in terms of having another exacerbation that requires either medication or an ED visit or hospitalization. And the goal is to significantly reduce those exacerbations. And what's exciting from a commercial standpoint is that this is a global problem. You can see the numbers of ED visits and hospital visits for asthma and COPD in Europe are remarkably similar to what I just noted for the US. So we did significant market research trying to understand how best to profile this product and to really highlight the differentiation of the product that I'll show you in a minute. And what we found is that clinicians were extremely excited by the opportunity to use a biologic acutely for patients having an exacerbation. There's really very few new products that have been developed for this setting and no biologics at all. And that by demonstrating this differentiation resulted in very significant increases in the forecast for this product. And just to highlight, this shows for just the acute setting, the proportion of patients that the clinicians would preference share. So they would tend to use the product in this proportion of patients. And looking at asthma, for example, in the acute setting, for a naive patient coming in, they would consider using the product 40% of the time. But where the money is in chronic use. The patient is using the product every month in and month out. And there, you want to get the patient on your drug, and we're competing against $15 billion behemoth of Dupixent. And so you have to differentiate yourself in order to achieve that. And what we found is having the acute indication drove a very high proportion of patients being put on the drug chronically, with 75% preference share. If a patient had been treated acutely, the clinician keeping the patient on chronically, which tends to make sense. If they did well acutely, no reason to switch. So there's a great opportunity to drive chronic use by having this acute exacerbation opportunity. And on the bottom here, you can see that looking at worldwide revenue, now this excludes China, which we've already sold rights, it comes out to about $5.5 billion forecast for peak worldwide sales. So a little bit about the drug again, IL-4, target, large phase 2 study already conducted, looking at 2 doses. This is the looking at the airway FEV1 endpoint. And the company did something unusual, and that's to look very early at when changes in FEV1 occurred. And you can see that in the first 2 weeks, you see very significant changes, even in the first week. But we also had given patients a spirometer to take home, and we in fact found that 75% of that 1 week benefit was seen after 24 hours. So very rapid onset for a biologic, with 100% of the 1 week activity seen at day 2. And very striking FEV1 changes, as you can see, out to 24 weeks. So this has led to our design and about to initiate 2 phase 2 studies looking at the acute use of the drug. When you have a drug that works within 24 hours, you have the opportunity to get that patient potentially out of the hospital sooner. COPD patients stay in the hospital 5-6 days. So there's an opportunity to improve length of stay. which is the gold standard for health economic benefit. And this is the COPD design, basically very similar. Standard of care plus drug versus standard of care plus placebo. The primary endpoint being 4-week treatment failure in both studies. Why do we think that there's potential to show a benefit? Well, we've been working on this for the last 6 months, but in just 2 months ago, a study was presented at the European Respiratory Society meeting where an investigator had done an investigator-initiated trial, basically doing the same thing, only using benrozumab, which is a long-acting agent, IL-5, and takes several weeks to start working, but still was able to show a very significant benefit in terms of reduction of treatment failure. And you can see in the graphic that you don't really see much difference in the first 3 weeks, but by week 4, you see a big separation, and they look out 3 months. We're only going to target 1 month endpoint because we start working within a day, as I've mentioned. But this study really helped us understand how to power our phase 2s, what endpoints to look for, as well as how best to find these patients. So extremely valuable, but this is pretty much it in terms of the use of biologics acutely. No pharma has ever studied this in a phase 2 setting. And now that study I just showed you is using Benra. You can see that the FEV1 improvements that you see with rademikibart here in the very top right of over 300 mils in patients with greater than 300 eosinophils, which are your primary targets for this mechanism. And you compare that to the only 106, 125 mil improvement with Benra, we have basically 3 times the improvement in FEV1. So we have very high confidence that we will show the same or certainly likely better improvement than what was seen in that successful trial. This graphic also highlights, obviously, pulling data from package inserts, that the FEV1 change that we see with rademikibart is really quite impressive and puts it much higher than what's seen with other biologics. So just giving kind of a summary of where we are with this product, we have invested significantly in manufacturing. We have a U.S. contract manufacturer that's demonstrated reproducible manufacturing. We have a new high-yield cell line, which we will be transferring to this manufacturer shortly, which allows significant pricing flexibility so that we can position this product in terms of looking out to the future when biosimilars for Dupixent are available. Will still be very competitive in terms of pricing and have an indication that they will not have. Phase 2, as I mentioned, very significant improvements in FEV1, and then starting these studies. This is just a snapshot of the exclusivity timeline, as I mentioned. Exclusivity out to 2040 and beyond. And this just summarizes what I've mentioned in terms of the significant commercial opportunity. Again, when you have 1 million ED visits for asthma, 1.3 million visits for COPD, hundreds of thousands of hospitalizations, a very significant unmet medical need here in the U.S. very similar numbers in Europe. And with the acute indication, the opportunity to drive very significant chronic use of the product, resulting in a forecast of $3.2 billion and $2.2 billion worldwide sales. Just some catalysts looking forward. As I mentioned, this was a Chinese-based biotech company with a new management team that came in June. We will be adopting US filings, filing our first K in February, and then going forward. So the goal here is to really convert this to a US-looking biotech with a small outpost in China that's still doing some manufacturing work in terms of improving the process, but really reducing the footprint of the Chinese group. And then initiating the 2 phase 2 studies. The great thing is that there's no competition for these patients, so we anticipate the ability to enroll both studies by the end of next year, and with a 1-month endpoint, the opportunity to have data early the following year. So very short studies and much less expensive than the usual asthma and COPD studies. And you can see that just a snapshot of the financials. We had $24 million in revenue. This came from Sincere, our partner in China, in terms of licensing fees and milestones. And we had $110 million at the end of June. Now this is sufficient cash to pay for the phase 2 studies that I outlined and still have cash into the first half of 2027. So we have a strong financial position. We have the cash to get us significant clinical data, and then the goal is to find a commercial partner for rest of world, or preferentially an acquirer. That's the end of the presentation. Thank you very much, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you. We could open the floor for questions, if there are any.
So do the patients need to have an eosinophil count to qualify to use the drug?
Yeah, so the eosinophil count for the phase 3 study will be 300. For the IL-4s, the data are very clear that patients, the higher the eosinophil count, the better they respond, because it's obviously then a T2-derived disease. And in the 150 to 300, we see fairly good activity as well. But if there's the opportunity to enhance your population so you get the best data, that's something that we would want to do. So we're going to target the greater than 300. And if you take a look at Dupixent's package insert, you'll see that they enroll patients across a range, but they pre-specified greater than 300 as the primary analysis group. And the data that's presented in their package insert is also all the 300 now.
Got it. And so in commercialization, you see that they'll have to run the eosinophil count before administering it in the
Yes.
setting.
Yeah, you want to give it to the right patients, obviously. Below 150, these drugs don't work. It's just a different disease.
This is a significant opportunity in itself, using asthma and COPD. Are there any other indications that you're working on or anything?
My goal is to try to get to these value-creating endpoints without raising cash at the low valuation that the company currently is. And so, there are many additional indications you can use an IL-4. I think Dupixent has 6. Obviously atopic dermatitis, a big one, but very competitive. There's nasal polyps, rhinitis, there's a host of different indications. We're gonna be very laser focused on the acute use because it's an area where there's no competition.
Sure. Okay, great.
Where did the cash come from?
The company went public in 2001. In 2021.
Okay. Low burn rate.
During COVID, when a whole bunch of biotechs came out. So it's the remainder of the IPO. Sorry.
In realigning the US teams, have you had to also restructure the relationship with the CRO?
Well, we did not have any, the CMO or
The clinical research organization to do the trials?
Yeah, so all the trials that I showed that were completed, the relationship there was done. And then the new studies are about to start. We are in negotiations with a new CRO to conduct those. We weren't necessarily 1,000% happy with the last one.
Was it an Asia-based?
Well, the China studies were actually done by the office in China. And they may have used a local contractor, but the global studies, we used a global CRO, and we're looking, we have plans to use a new one. But the new study will be, as I mentioned, predominantly US. We may have a few sites in Latin America, because seasonality of these diseases means that we can get patients recruited in Latin America, and it's slow in North America, and then kind of flip.
As part of the initiation of the phase 2, is there any other preclinical work that the FDA is requiring before you?
No. Actually, we had, prior to my joining the company in June, the prior management had thoughts of going into phase 3, and the FDA gave clearance to the company to move into phase 3 for both atopic dermatitis as well as asthma. So there's a few things we'd have to complete for approval, but we're free to go at this point. So I think we just have 1 minute. No other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
With more than 6,000 small and micro cap companies listed, if you're looking for the next Apple, then ChannelCheck truly is the orchard. It's an investor community where you can access independent Wall Street research, advanced market data, balanced news, corporate videos, and podcasts. You can even register to attend in-person Meet the Management Series luncheons, and to be part of the preeminent annual Small and Microcap Investor Conference, NobleCon. And here's the best news. Since ChannelCheck is sponsored by the featured companies, premium membership requires no investment. It's absolutely free. So check it out. Log in today. Find out why ChannelCheck is North America's leading source of research on the companies that just may change the world.